Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Major. This is their part number HIT-41HS6. Here it is. This is what it looks like. HIT-41-HS6. This video is going to go in depth on what it is all about, what it's for, how to use it. A future video will demonstrate me using it, but we'll talk about the background of what it's being used with, looking at the templates, looking at the installation instructions and whatnot. Let's just start with some basic dimensional properties. First of all, this is 1.59 pound is what it is in terms of weight. Overall length about 10 7/8. Overall width on the face of the frame about 1 inch and 15/16. The rabbet area of the frame about 2.5. And the aluminum that's just bolted together looks like it's about 7/16. So the template, the business end, that's in the box or the package. Okay. You're also going to get basically fine self-drilling bugle head drywall screws, basically is what you're going to get. And we'll show you what you're going to use those for as well. Then you're going to get installation instructions, and we're going to go through these at length. There's likely every bit of 12 pages here. It's the opposite of furniture from IKEA. There's actual words, and there's really big real photographs. So for us, meaning people that didn't grow up looking at installation instruction with nothing other than images, and it's in Imperial, it's a little easier to approach because it's just the way that, that I grew up seeing installation instructions. Sometimes that furniture you put together is not so easy, although it really is once you've done it once or twice. The point of me pointing all of that out is even though it's thick, there's a lot to it. Don't be intimidated by it. Large font, lots of pictures, easy to follow. We'll go over that. Let's talk about now exactly what this template is all about and where, or I should say why you might consider purchasing it. Okay, so if you're looking at this, you clearly have an electric strike that you need to install, very possibly into an aluminum frame. Installing it into a wood frame, prepping a wood frame, possibly. I don't see any reason why you couldn't or wouldn't, but you're going to see this in aluminum storefront mostly. So that's one. So if you're doing an electric strike in an aluminum storefront frame, you could be looking at this. And then for sure, if you're doing a HES or Hanshit entry systems, or I think they call it Hanshit Innovations or something now, a 5200 series electric strike, this could very likely be the one. It's meant for HES 5200s and RF5210-EA series offset hung frame. So what that means is you have an electric strike in what would be an offset hung door, which would mean continuous geared aluminum hinges, pin and barrel hinges, butt hinges, pivots that are 3/4 or 1.5 inch offset, meaning it's not center hung where the vertical axis of pivoting or the pivot point is down through the center of the thickness of the door. This would be outside of the door like you'd have in butts or pivots is how it would be. So if you're doing that sort of hardware, you're prepping for that sort of hardware, you've hit the bullseye with this. That's what this is for. This is going to require that you have a router, that you have the proper router guide, that you have the proper router bit. Doesn't mean the ones from Major, but they do offer those. It's going to mean that you review the installation instructions and know how to do it. It's going to mean that you likely go in, when you do the prep work, go in the sequence that the manufacturer's instructions are laid out in, because the person who wrote those has actually done the work, likely countless times. That experience has allowed that person to create the installation instructions, and that's what it's for. This template will allow you to create for your client in their expensive aluminum storefront that you can't nick, gouge, scratch, damage in any way, a clean preparation. And when you're done, it's going to be as close to factory as possible. You'll use a router with a carbide bit in it. It will produce, the prep work will produce a very clean end result. It will not be necessarily simple, although it's not hard. Routing aluminum is not really a big deal. It does tend to make quite a racket. And they do have some lubricant that they specify that you use for cutting the frame as well. So let's switch to the screen view and let's go through the installation instructions now page by page, and we'll deviate from there as necessary. So let's do that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here's the hardware that we are looking at. This is the major HIT-41 HS6 router template for the HES 5200 and RF5210. I'm really not familiar with what this one is, but we'll pull up the HES catalog. If we have inventory, it would be listed here. Router template. 503 option, that's interesting. That, I happen to know what that is. That's a taller faceplate on the strike. And that would make sense because this has a larger, taller height in the preparation. Faceplate with rounded corners. So this is meant to prep any item, well, any electric strike that has a 6 7/8 tall by 1.25 inches with rounded corners. Faceplate. The strike is used when removing a deadbolt lock and replacing it with a dead latch. Okay, so what that means is it's very typical for generally a locksmith to call us and say the client wants to add access control over an existing opening that has a deadbolt. So a deadbolt and access control don't really go together very well. So you need to turn it into a dead latch because an Adams Wright deadbolt, generally Adams Wright, doesn't work well with an electric strike. So you need an electric strike because it's possibly the path of least resistance in terms of providing an electrified piece of hardware to the opening that you can then mount access control, like a keypad or something else, onto it. You're inheriting a door that already has a dead latch, and therefore, a deadbolt, which means in the frame you have a taller than average prep for the bolt to engage the rabbet of the frame, which means you need a taller than average piece of hardware that you're going to prep over the preparation of the Adams Wright strike prep in the jam. Very common call. I've got a deadbolt, I got to turn it into a dead latch, I want to put access control, what do I need? Well, you need an electric strike, is easier sometimes, and you're going to need it with a taller faceplate. Bingo, that's what this is. The larger faceplate covers the long opening left by the deadbolt strike. Mounts to a door or frame with self-drilling screws, which are supplied. That was a package of screws I showed you earlier. I'll show you them again in a moment. Now it says mounts to door or frame. Well, you could do this in a pair of doors. You could prep the inactive door for electric strike as well. This is really important. It requires the use of a router equipped with a 3/8 outside diameter template guide and a 1/4 inch diameter router bit. We're going to go over that again. For use on offset hung aluminum doors and frames only. Yep, that is true. Let's just touch on that for a moment. So, offset hung. So it's all about where is the vertical axis of pivoting? Where's the center line of the hardware? When you hang a door, you can hang it either offset or you can hang it center hung. Center hung means that it's down in the center of the thickness of the door somewhere is where it is. Offset hung means that the vertical axis of pivoting is somewhere measured off of the face of the door to the center line. That can be 3/4 inch, that could be 1.5 inches, that could be whatever a butt hinge is, but it's measured off the face of the door to that vertical axis of pivoting. Now, couldn't your door be center hung and still be prepped for this strike? Probably not, because of how the mechanics of the door swinging is going to interact with the hardware hitting the electric strike, number one. Number two, if you are doing something center hung, generally what you have are cased opening frames, and the door is hung in the center of the opening like this. That's center hung because they're generally double acting, or they can just be single acting. So that discusses how that might be, and a center hung application, when they mean you can't put a strike prep out here for a center hung door if this door was, located in here and center hung. Not that you can't, but when they mean center hung, major is referring to this type of application, would be my guess. Sold as each. When you buy one, we'll ship you one. Okay, so there's a product brochure and installation instructions. Let's dive right into the installation instructions. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, and as we look at the installation instructions, which are linked right here, again, this is included in the package, and it is indeed 12 pages. Instructions for the HIT41 series. So this installation instruction, set of instructions are appropriate for all HIT41 series. Let's just hop over to the product brochure, because all of these are HIT41s. They're just variations on a theme in the sense of they're templates meant for different models of strikes. Everything on here is a HES strike from what I see. HS1 through HS6. By the way, there's the router bit they recommend. Alright, let's just finish looking at the product brochure since it's here. 5000, 5700, etc., with the 501 faceplate. And as you look at the description of each of these, you'll see the different models that they're intended for. But I'm going to end up showing you in the product catalog how to use a cross-reference chart to more conveniently find the hardware that you're looking for. I just happened to look. Here's what the center hung prep looks like right here. And we were talking about how the door is basically deeper inset into the frame. You can see what they're trying to achieve with that right here, with the 41 HS4 in a center hung frame. So it doesn't mean that the door is center hung per se. This could be for a standard offset hung where you have a deep inset. It could be that. You have a 12-inch deep frame and the door is not flush with the face of the frame. It's set in, say, 2-inch. That exists as well. You would probably use that template for this application. So they mean center hung. They mean a door that's hung in the center of either a 4-inch or a 4.5-inch deep frame. They're calling it center hung. I wouldn't use the term center hung that way, because the way that I describe center hung would be this dimension from here to here being equal from this dimension from here to here does not make it center hung. This makes it center hung. You could do this where this dimension is 0 here. What I was talking about earlier with a deep inset, you could have a frame like this, and you have your door here, and it swings out this way, and this dimension is 2-inch, let's say. It could be anything. That exists. You would use that HS4 for this prep as well. This one. Okay, so you get the concept. There are different templates for different applications and different strikes. This would be the router bit to use. I would, if you're buying the template, just buy the router bit. It's one less thing you have to worry about picking up or being wrong. Plus, this is a down shear, which is meant specifically for this application. The rotation of the spiral is down shear so that it pulls the bit or the tool towards the face of the material, or pushes the chips into the frame rather than sucking them out. That would be the appropriate bit, and we'll show you the guide as well. Okay, let's dive into the instructions. Always wear eye and ear protection with when using power tools. I would put a dust mask on as well. You don't want to breathe in particulate of aluminum or anything else. Please read all instructions before attempting to use. So the router bit must be equipped with the template guide prior to use. If you don't have a template guide on your router, you're going to destroy your template, your frame, etc. Failure to do so will result in the wrong size opening in the door or jam and possible damage to your template. Aluminum door templates require a 3/8 outside diameter template with a 1/4-inch diameter bit. We just covered the bit. It was the HIT-45 RB4. That's the right bit. The reason that they mention it so many times is because having the right guide and the right bit is absolutely required for doing this successfully. That's why they mention it over and over and over. Safety outline here. Very important that when you route in a clockwise direction. You move in a clockwise direction on your tool path. Don't go counterclockwise and don't back up. Once you start your prep, go clockwise and go continually until you exit the workpiece. Always wear eye and ear protection. And right now we're already halfway through 1/3 of the installation instructions. Like I said, it's nothing to be intimidated by. So immediately they again touch on the guide. 3/8 has to be the outside diameter of the guide. The bit is 1/4-inch. Those two that relationship must be absolute. Otherwise, Let's look at photographs that we have. This would be a good time to do so. There's the packaging. There's the template. If the relationship between your guide diameter and your bit diameter aren't correct, then the net or the result prep that you'll put in the frame won't be the right size. I had a client prepping sauce hinges one time, and he said, boy, I bought the template from you, but the hinges, I can hardly get them in. And I looked at the client's order and noticed they didn't buy the guide or the router bit from me, which is no big deal. You just have to have the right size router bit and guide. And I asked what they were doing for that, and he explained, oh, I had them in my toolbox, etc. So the next thing to check, because I know from experience, is what size guide he has. And he had the right size guide, but his router bit was 1/8 of an inch too small, which was giving him a prep that was, of course, too small. He could beat the hinge into the door, but that would be about it. So he had to get the right diameter bit, which we sent to him. He ordered and we sent the bit to the client, and had to re-prep everything. But once he did that, it was absolutely perfect. So the packaging, there's an etched line here. There's one here. You can see part of one here and here. I want to just bring those to your attention because they'll apply in a moment. This is the face of the frame. Black anodized aluminum, screwed together, 2 pieces. This is the rabbet of the frame. Obviously, this is important. Well, we'll talk about it. This etched line here and here, and then again here and here. The back side of the template, what kind of would be a cross section, I suppose, of the template. The screws that are included, and the instructions that we're actually going over right now. Okay, so install the 1/4 inch diameter aluminum cutting router bit into the router collet and secure tightly. Do not bottom the bit in the collet. Hold it about 1/16 from the bottom, adjusting the router bit so that it will route 1/4 to 3/8 into the channel. So you can always set the depth of what you're routing based on how you position the router base. You could loosen that, turn that router base around, and decrease from the router base to the edge of the router bit. Not so crucial with this prep because you're not doing a bottom or a flat-ended prep like you would for a hinge or for a overhead stop or for a latch bolt of a lock set. No big deal. They just want this going into the workpiece about 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8. The electric strike being installed in the following demonstration is for an offset hung door. There are strike models for both offset and center hung. If mounting in a center hung jamb, be sure there is depth clearance for the strike. If you're mounting in a center hung jamb, be sure there's depth clearance for the strike. Well, what they actually mean there is, in this application, where is the rest of the wall? Do you have room back here to fit your strike into before you hit the wall, what's part of the wall construction? That's certainly what they mean. All right, here's how we go about installing it. So what they're doing here is they're using the latch hardware itself as to give you a reference point for the location of your electric strike. A couple of mechanical pencil marks top and bottom. Then use a combination square with, the edge of the combination square in the palm of the right hand here, pushed against the face of the frame, and you can make a real nice clean pencil mark. You're going to want that there. Transfer these lines to the front and side of the jamb, so put it on the rabbet, and then run them on, well, they're on the face now, because that's what we did here. Then transfer them to the rabbet like they're doing here. Then establish a vertical center line. Now remember that line, and that line, and then recall what I pointed out earlier about that line, and then that line with those etched lines. So now striking a vertical center line is what is being demonstrated here. With a combination square, establish the center line of the strike, and they mean the vertical center line. You don't have a center line of the electric strike from the top down, because you've just gone with where the position of the latch bolt is. For a standard 1 3/4 door, this dimension is 7/8. So what they're saying is from the face of the frame to the center line is 7/8 of an inch. So half of 1 3/4 is 7/8. From the door stop, if the lock is centered in the door channel, if the lock is off center, adjust accordingly. The face of the electric strike and the face of the lock must be centered together when the door is closed. Okay, this is really the important sentence, because part of this doesn't, I wouldn't take this verbatim, because in any installation, you're going to have, let's just draw this more like aluminum, right? Blade stop. Okay, you've got your door. So in this sketch, there's a dimension from the face of the frame to the face of the door. 1/8 of an inch, or it could be 0. That matters. This also matters. The dimension from the face of the blade stop to the face of the door. It's usually going to be 0. The door will make contact with the face of the stop. But the point is this. If your door is 1 3/4, which it probably is, but it may not be. There's 2 1/4 inch thick aluminum. The question becomes is, what's the dimension of the rabbet? It's not 1 3/4. It's for sure not. In hollow metal, this dimension is 1 15/16 for an 1 3/4 thick door, because they're basically splitting that 3/16 between a 3/32 inset here and then a small amount, 3/32 basically here, because you'll always have a rubber bumper installed in a hollow metal frame. The point is the center line of the door and the location of the strike have to be the same center line. If we're using a drafting sort of convention, dashed lines like this could mean center line or center line. That means on the same center line. You've got to determine the center line of this, how it translates to the rabbet based on anything happening here and anything happening here, whether it be aluminum or wood or hollow metal. Aluminum's a little bit easier, I suppose. It's very often that there's not an inset aluminum, but there are inset aluminum installations, meaning there is a dimension here. It can be 0. It can also be something not 0. So let's move on. Page 6, we're halfway through almost. Align the HIT 41 template to the pencil marks and attach to the jamb using the Tech Point drywall screws. It's a good idea to use a drill with a clutch feature. Have you ever snapped a tiny, like a 1/16 drill bit in a piece of wood? Yeah, you don't want to do that with this stuff. So what they didn't mention there is line the template to the pencil marks against the etched lines in your template in the 4 positions. Tech screws are going to hold the template to the jamb, and my recommendation is that you don't use the tech screws to drill the hole, that you simply drill it with a 9/64 bit. You hold the template or clamp the template in place and then use a proper drill bit, because there are drill bushings on the back side of this tool. So backing it up, use a drill with a clutch feature. Absolutely set it very low. You don't want to snap it off. Some templates have 1 hole and some have 2. The mounting tabs that come with this strike have 2. That's why there are 2 holes. You're going to not only use these holes to hold the template to the frame, 1 screw at the top and 1 at the bottom should be sufficient, but while you're there, drill the 9/64 hole in the other 2 holes, because the mounting tab needed later which are included, you're already doing the work to locate those. The second hole for the tab can be located and drilled by drilling the 9/64 bit. Now you've got it attached to the frame. Now it's time to prepare to cut. The manufacturer suggests that you use Tapmatic. LPS is the name of the manufacturer. Tapmatic Edge Cream. It's cutting lubricant is what it is. That will serve to keep the tool at a lower temperature or cooler. That will also serve to reduce the chatter, the noise, the decibel level, which will be exceptional, a little bit lower, I imagine. And will also help control the chips that will fly off. It's going to allow the cutting edge of the bit to do its job more efficiently. We sell products by LPS. Now is time to start. When they mention 1/4 inch past the aluminum, right there. 1/4 to 3/8 is what they said. Place the router on the face of the frame, down in the bottom, again, only clockwise. This is the side view. You're all ready to go. Your router bit isn't touching the workpiece just yet, and you're completely flat against the template. Place the router at the bottom of the template. You will be routing the lip area first, rotating clockwise starting at the bottom. Let the router come to full speed and route through the jamb. Be sure to hold the router flat in the template and do not back up in the cut. If you back up, the tool might jump out at you, and it's going to cause an irregular cut for sure. I like he's using a Porter cable router here. He's using one with a D grip, or they may call it a pistol grip. That's personal preference. The pistol grip or the D grip will allow you to get control over it. I always liked the Porter Cable 100 routers. I believe they were 7/8 horsepower. They discontinued them and replaced them, but this is the one I always used. Light horsepower. You know, I'm not evacuating a lot of material in one pass. Couple of good sturdy knobs. That's the one I always used. Turn it on, start making your cut, continue straight through. The noise will be exceptional. You won't want to do it in a working environment where people are on the telephone. Ear protection is mandatory. Clean cut. Don't exit out this side. Note that we did not route through the top of the lip area. This cut will be next with the next pass. If you run through the sidewall, you risk hitting the template with the router bit because your guide kind of leaves the safe zone for this material. The instructions say to stop short. That's what we're doing. Place the router now at the top of the rabbit. Now what they're not mentioning here is the template design itself. The thickness of this, I mentioned it earlier about the thickness. It's perfect for the projection of typical stops on an aluminum frame. The template they're showing here is green. It's a different template. So that will allow you to run the base of your router over the stop that's there. Okay, start the next prep. Same instructions for doing the rabbit prep. For doing this, you start here and you move clockwise only. Now, if you needed to, you could make one more pass, one more cleaning pass, if you felt that it was necessary. If it's your first time, the router may have moved a little bit and you have a marginally irregular prep here that you're going to go and clean it. Do one more pass if necessary, but don't do any more than that. At this stage, I always stop and thoroughly clean the tool. I clean it as if I'm putting it away, and if I'm done with using the tool, I thoroughly clean it and thoroughly pack it back away. This is the step that I do that. I don't put it back on the work table. I don't leave it there. I leave everything organized. So that's personal preference. They've got a small little inexpensive brush that they're getting the chips off. I would go so far as to really clean that router base because you don't want any microparticulates embedded in there, because you don't want to scratch your template over time, or at least reduce it as much as possible. Clean the tool, brush the chips away. Actually, what they're saying is clean the tool, then make a second cleanup pass if necessary. That's better. That's the proper way to go. Clean the tool, remove the chips, make a second pass, then clean the tool. Now what they're saying is remove the template from the jam. Obviously clean your template at this point. Clean up the entire frame at this point as well. And you've got a pretty good prep here. Now they're going back and cleaning any of the burrs, which there will be, making final hand fitting to this with a small file. Speaking of files, this mill file that's here will be appropriate for squaring corners. A light touch is all that's needed, unless you need a radius corner. Speaking of a radius corner, you will need a radius corner for the 503 faceplate. It has a 3/16 radius, the faceplate itself, whereas that router bit has an 1/8 inch radius, so you will need to open that prep up a little bit. So HES 5200, let's see if we can find a template for it just to talk about that faceplate option. All right, here's a 503 faceplate only. Installation instructions. 5000 series, 501, 501A, 502, 503. There's your faceplate. That's what this template will give you, and that radius is 3/16. Just to put that into a little bit of spatial, a spatial sort of context. Let's take a look at this circle. 3/16 radius circle, 1/8 inch radius. The template's going to require a 3/16 radius, so you will have to. Basically, what you need to accomplish is you need to go from you need to go from this to this is the bottom line. So you need to open that up a little bit. Okay. So that's what that rat tail file will be for that they're showing here. You've got your pencil marks still on the frame. You're going to want to take time to clean all that off. It's time to drill out the holes needed for the factory mounting tabs. The 3/16 drill bit is for that. The template in this case uses 2 mounting holes top and bottom. Some strikes only require 1. Countersink the holes now for the screw that is included with the mounting tabs. I would imagine it's a number 10 would be my guess. Prep is complete. That's what you're going to get. Clean your pencil marks, attach your mounting tabs, pull your wires and connect, and then install the strike. Oh, one important thing is install the mounting tabs. Leave them a little loose, like a half a turn. Leave these screws a little loose, wire it, connect the strike to the mounting tabs, and once you are satisfied that it fits in the prep, then you tighten these 4 screws. Leave everything slightly loose. I do that with mortise locks. When I install the mortise case, I leave the cassette about a half a turn loose, so that when I install the spindle, the lever, the mounting posts, the screws, the cylinder, the thumb turns, and the fasteners for all of that, the case can wiggle a little bit, and I test operation. I don't have the armor front installed, but once I'm satisfied, I'll then make that last final half turn on the screwdriver to get the mortise cassette secured, and that's the same logic here. Finished installation, that's all there is to it. Let's talk about Major.com right now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, below this video, as seen here on the manufacturer's page, there is a link to the manufacturer's page for Major in our site, and when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the Major products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation seen here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog. And you can fire up that product catalog, and we can take a look at all things Major, all of their fixtures, their jigs, their templates. They started about halfway through the catalog. Now, I mentioned a cross-reference, and that cross-reference is about halfway through. I typed in 5200. Control F for a find function for 5200. 5200 series strike offset hung with a 4 7/8 face. That's not what we're doing. 5200 series offset hung with a 6 7/8 face. Hit 41 HS6. Well, yep, that's the template we need. You can then do a find function for hit 41 HS6 and you'll find it. And there's your template. That cross-reference is really handy. When someone calls and says, hey, I need to prep for Schlage L9000 series mortise locks and aluminum doors and frames, which, yes, is done, that cross-reference is a great way to get started. The first half of the catalog has a lot of security hardware in it, and I would certainly suggest if you're a locksmith or an integrator or someone who's interested in security hardware and you install it, etc., or improving the security on an existing installation, this would be a great document to dive into because Major has lots of applications that they've solved with very unique pieces of hardware. Happy to talk to you about any of this material. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So again, Major, this template, this tool, the approach is pretty much the same regardless of what you're working on. I very much enjoy working with Major, very much. A self-professed tool nerd who's done a lot of work out in the field integrating hardware. I think he may have done that work for, well, the gentleman I speak to mostly, for 20 years. Tool nerd, 20 years of field experience, and someone who has an engineering background. That is a very potent confluence of skills resulting in tools and solutions for people who need a tool or a solution, and that's what they're really great at. So if you have any questions on the HIT 41 HS6 or any other Major product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.